being more mindful how I'm being received in terms of like, before it was more an anxious thinking. Now I see it as more considerate to say that I may know who I am, but other people can only, I love that quote I come across somewhat recently, that people can only receive you to the point that they like receive and accepted themselves. They can't receive you at a certain depth, but that they haven't received, that they haven't reached yet. So if somebody hasn't sort of gone deep, sort of whether it's healing or thinking deeply, thinking and processing who they are and how they can't receive you in that depth if they haven't gone there themselves. So being considerate of that. Not everybody is where you are. I think a lot about stuff. I've been through lots of things in life that have brought me to this place, and that hasn't been easy. And not everybody's there yet. So because I've experienced a lot in a short amount of time, I've been able to think in a certain type of way. Not everybody's there yet. So being considerate in that way, but also not being afraid.
I'm a philosopher, a mentor, and former advisor to the British Prime Minister. Meet my co-host Kevin. He's a former US Coast Guard captain and now an esteemed business leader and family man. And together, we're going to help you find your courage. How do you find your courage? You crush the dilemmas that life throws at you. So we're going to help you do just that.
Amazing. So thank you so much, Canyon Solar, for joining us on the podcast today. Super excited to have you with us, especially as you are an ambassador, a friend of the Character Company, and you really believe in what we're doing. So thank you so much for all of your support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you again for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you. And I think the dilemma that we're going to be talking about today is going to resonate with a lot of people, because in this social media age and in this modern time, our identity and our self-image is really like zoned in on because of the technology and can change the way that we feel about ourselves. So I'm really excited for the conversation today. Before I get too much ahead of myself, I'd love to give you the opportunity to share in your own words the dilemma that you'd like us to support you with today.
Something that's been on my mind recently, as a young person in their 20s, is how you see yourself, how you view yourself, and how the the personality, but the person you project yourself to be or portray yourself to be on social media, but also in different rooms, different settings, being yourself as much as possible in every room that you step into. So self-image and self-identity with how you portray yourself and who you are, and how true that is to each other.
What made you think about this? Was there an event or a moment that really sparked this concern?
Gosh, I think an event or a moment. I think it's more so, most recently it's been in reflection, thinking, okay, like how do I see my viewing when you're thinking about lots of things, and then I think, okay, but this all sort of stems from how I see myself and how I view myself and who I think I am, and do I act according to that? Sometimes people, I think what actually, to answer your question, I think what sparked it was some people saying things about you, and you're thinking that represents an aspect of me that I can understand how they see me as that, but that doesn't feel like it's fully me. Or whether it's like a nice thing that somebody says about you and you're thinking, oh, that's nice, but you haven't seen like the not so nice things about me. So you're portraying me as this great person, but I know that there are lots of things I want to work on, and I'm appreciative of that compliment, but I'm still trying to think of, perhaps I'm focusing too much on the negative things. I think like, okay, this needs work and that needs work and that needs to a lot of development. So I think those sorts of comments are the things that trigger me to think, okay, how do I see myself? And how should I see myself? And how can I actually improve and grow in character and as a person all around? So yeah, I think those instances when people have like made comments, not negative, not sometimes, also it's just sort of that shows that they have seen you and you're like, oh, I didn't realize you saw that. I thought that was something that only my close friends and family saw, not the general public to perceive something about you. Yeah.
What is it that others see in you that you have a hard time recognizing in yourself?
Uh, I'm laughing because I'm like all the nice things. No, I think people see me as I think they think that I know what I'm doing and as very self assured. And there are lots of aspects of me that I'm fairly assured in, despite any sort of like, okay, I wish I could do this and better, because I understand that I'm not perfect, nor is everybody else. So there is that. I think it's more the confidence and being self assured and thinking that like I have my things together, I know what I'm doing, and I don't. Yeah, I may have plans and things like that. I think if I am articulating myself in a certain context, I'm doing it with confidence and self-assuredness. So I think they think that that's everything, and that I don't really worry or doubt anything, or I'm just super positive and I never have any down days, or if they are, they're like up days and then down days and not up days and down days. Yeah.
Do you feel like a pressure to project a certain image sometimes?
Yeah, especially when growing up, I didn't feel like I could. I felt lots of backlash when people, whenever I was sort of neutral or not happy, shining, bubbly, having lots of personality, and I didn't really feel like I could show the because when I did, people would say I go by my full name is Coinsler, but I used to go by Soda. I don't anymore because I love my full name. And they would say, "Oh, Soda, like, what's wrong? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm just," or I wasn't fine, but I didn't really want to address the issue. So it just felt like I couldn't be. It wasn't that I couldn't be myself. It's just I didn't feel safe enough to be like to talk about the things that I was thinking about or dealing with those people. And so it's like, okay, I know I don't have the difficulty in articulating that or or pinpointing this is the issue, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm dealing with. It was that I don't want to have to share it with you, or you wouldn't understand. I don't expect you to understand, because my faith is a big part of how I deal with issues. And so it's like I would have to explain the faith bit, and then I don't want to seem like I'm trying to. It was just a lot to process. And I thought I'm already dealing with something else. I don't want to have to then process how I'm meant to explain things to you or explain myself to you, to help you figure me out and help me when it's like this isn't the time or place or the person to be speaking to about. So I think that was a big thing to say that, okay, I don't want to have to. I'd rather just sort of keep up this projection for the time being, and then with the families or with friends, I could be more open, and that helped me. But sometimes you kind of have to save face because of that mental process I'd have to go through if I was to share. Or at least that's what I thought. Now I don't. I think that's not always the case. But in my mind, that's what I had to. That's what I would have to explain. Yeah.
Did you experience sometimes explaining certain parts of yourself, and did people have you had an experience of being misunderstood? Do you think that maybe that's why you might have this fear of sharing certain parts of yourself? Has that been a negative experience for you in the past, or is it just a fear of what might happen?
I think yes. A lot of times now I've realized I didn't realize that before. I think because from a young age I sort of felt not entirely understood or seen as one or dimensional and not as a multifaceted person. I didn't like explaining myself. I still don't really. I don't mind it now because I see it. I see it differently. But sort of having to like entreat somebody to accept you or to understand you, because I've often realized that when people sort of have this idea about you, even if they're presented with alternate information, unless they have the heart posture or mindset to see somebody as multifaceted and to understand that people can have off days and people aren't always, you can't always box people in to say, okay, this person's always like this and they always do this, and having this, I understand why our brains do it and our minds do it and how we're socialized to do it. But I just think, okay, some people don't, they, regardless of how you present yourself or who you actually are, they're only going to see you as one thing. So yeah, I was often misunderstood in that way, to say that, okay, I'm not here to explain myself or to act in a certain way for you to accept me. I'd rather just I'd rather just stay away from that thing and just continue as I am. Yeah.
Wow, I think this is a really difficult lesson to learn in life about where and who you're safe to reveal your whole self to. because I think that it's actually really healthy to have some boundaries, you know,
Yeah.
to say that there are certain elements of who I am that I only share with my friends and with my family and people
Mm.
who have earned the privilege of
Yes.
that part of me. Um, I think when it can be a problem is when we feel that we have to hide ourselves even from our family and friends.
Mm.
And so I wonder, has that been something that you've ever experienced?
Hiding yourself more so from friends and family. I think with family, it's kind of hard to hide yourself because they see you. They've seen everything. They've seen the good, the bad. I think it's more sort of letting your with family. You have to see people as they grow and accept each new stage of growth. Like with, like for example, my older sister. I think, okay, like yes, I knew her when she was 13 and 16 and 17, but now she's not. She's older than me, so you're having to embrace a person who is changing, just like with your friends, and not choose to see them in a set way. With friends, I think, especially as I went to different schools when I was growing up, and with friends, it's always been, I always, in my mind, thought, do people have the capacity to like really receive me fully? Because
Mm.
sometimes you show like a little bit of yourself, and there's people like, wow, there's so much energy, and you're like, oh, that wasn't everything. And so I hold back and be like, okay, this is a level that they can handle. I'll just be like my full bubble, sometimes because I want to be that. I don't want to feel like I can't be that because I didn't want people to see me as only that and not be able to handle the parts of me that are more serious, that are more deep thinking, or very matter of fact and abrupt and things like that. To say, okay, I can be both joyous and serious. I can be both competent and warm, and I can be a mix of those things and everything in between. So with friends more so, because family, I think my family love me and have seen me grow and accept that. Whereas with friends, because friends have changed over the years, and in high school, sometimes you consider people friends who are only friends because of how frequently you interact with each other and the memories that you have at school, versus people now in terms of adulthood, you're intentionally choosing your friends and intentionally building those relationships. And that's different because you have those boundaries, and you sort of, what I'm learning is being yourself with everybody, and with the people, with relationships, you intentionally say, okay, I'm going to share this part of myself and not test people, but you see, okay, they can handle this, I can share them more, I can say more, and with time that gets better. So yes, definitely more so with friends than with family. But wasn't until I was older that I could feel like I could truly be myself with friends,
Mm.
and that took time, a lot of time, because most of the time I realized I was projecting what I thought they wanted to make it easier for myself.
I'm really curious. What are the elements of you that you are very confident in sharing with the world? And what are the parts of you that you try to keep secret or hidden?
Um, the I think I'll answer it in the reverse because I think that's easier. The parts that I try to keep hidden, or I've kept more hidden, recently I'm sharing more so because it's easier. I've learned to love and embrace myself a lot more over the past few years. I think it's like the extent of how big my personality. No, do you know what? I am very black and white in thinking, and I don't want to come across as judgmental because I know my heart isn't judgmental. And there are lots of things I'll be talking with a friend, like one of my closest friends, and I'm like, I didn't know people did that. I didn't know this is how people thought. I didn't think that. And she's like, yeah, well, yes, because you've had this upbringing, you've had this certain way of thinking and high standard that you held yourself to. And so when people do something else, just like, I knew people did that somewhere else in the world. But when it's someone that you know or you have interacted with and you're thinking, gosh, like, I didn't know that happened in our generation. What is going on? So I think my opinions, that's it. My opinions
Mhm.
are my opinions, my mindset, and my thoughts I keep to myself. I may say share general things, and I'm very diplomatic in how I speak anyway, but my opinions, my thoughts, I keep those to myself. And
That is so interesting.
yeah, and also with friends, I'm like, my thinking process, my friends have the capacity to hold space with me whilst I process and whilst I muse, and not judge me for the black and white thinking, or for being judgmental, because they know that, oh, your heart isn't to judge, your heart is to understand. And it's kind of like, I have to go through that process, or yeah, I have to go through that process to think, okay. Or for example, if I'm particularly having a negative spout of thinking, I then they're able to hold space with me to say, okay, you're not like a bad, just, yeah, I'm trying to put it in words, because sometimes it's emotional stuff where it's like, okay, they're able to encourage me and pick me up, and I'm able to just say how I think without to say, okay, I think this, I know this isn't the case, but I have to say, well, how I think and how I feel to be able to acknowledge everything else. It's like, I can't hold something whilst I'm carrying stuff. I have to drop that, and they're able to hold space for me to drop that in their lap and to drop that in the space where they're in. Then I can, after dropping it, then I can receive what they're saying, or really analyze the truth. But when I've gotten what I think out there, so whether it's like an opinion about just, yeah, how I think and how I process, those are quite near and dear to me, and sort of ideas and plans and dreams that I have, those I keep quite close to my heart. And things, yeah, things that I want to do, things that I'm fairly confident in sharing is, I'm sort of able to give the headlines. Okay, I think, like I can say, okay, I sometimes think, but I'm very careful in that, because what's black and white thinking to me isn't black and white thinking to somebody else. When I say it, like, I'm very much like, it's rather this, or some, what and how I'm viewing it isn't how somebody else may be seeing it, because it's different to them. My red may be their, we may both say red, but they may be thinking a pinkish red, and I'm thinking a blood red. So I'm also cautious of how somebody receiving what I'm saying, not just is it true to me. So yeah, I'm more confident. I hide. I'm very, very reserved in that. And just in general, I've been only until recently, the past year and a half or so, I've been more open about sharing who I am and how I think and process, and not being averse to answering personal questions, like about family, just about most things. I would just sort of, I wouldn't share about it. General things, other people, I'm happy to talk to you about you, but about me, I wouldn't want to do that. Not actively. I wouldn't like go out my way to do so. But things that I'm confident in sharing about, sort of career path wise, that's fine. Especially because if I'm going to a networking event or something like that, I'd have to share those things. So career path and sort of like headlines, hobbies, interests, that sort of thing. And who I am as a person in terms of, I think this, in terms of, not I think this way. I'm trying to figure out the best way to put it. Not who I am. Oh, like, oh, okay. I am very, like, character wise, to say that, okay, this is how I sort of see the world, and sort of explaining like a brief outline. I've been fairly confident in putting that across. And just in what I generally enjoy life and green things. So those hobbies, interests, and the sort of headlines of who I am as a person, to give people an understanding and an idea of me as a personality. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I see a lot of myself in you. But I think as humans, we're always looking to connect, and maybe I'm making connections where there aren't any. So tell me if I'm wrong. But what I observe in you is this real capacity to, you're very passionate about what you believe in. Yeah. You really care about it. And you have some strong opinions about how things should be. But you also are very careful because you're afraid of being so confident or direct, so that you water it down a little bit, because that's what most people do, right? Because we're really taught to be diplomatic, especially as women and girls. You know, we've got to be friendly, got to be warm. We can't be disagreeable, or boys won't like us, or the world's going to hate us. And it isn't helped by the fact that opinionated women are often really mocked and criticized by others. But you have that fire in you. And so there's this kind of frustration because you want to advocate. You want to be a thought leader. You want to put these ideas out there, but you're afraid of how people will respond to you if you do that. And I think that's actually very rational. Like, I think that's a really rational fear and maybe really smart, because I don't know if I had enough of that. And I just kind of went out there and, perhaps was too confident in putting forward those ideas and maybe didn't think through how to do it the right way or how to be more diplomatic. I was a kind of, I was a bit rough and ready when I was, a media commentator. I wasn't polished at all, but I spoke my mind, and it was really cool because I know that in human history that hasn't always been the case. It's a very modern concept. Like freedom of speech and freedom of debate is a very modern concept. And women being part of that debate is also a modern concept. So we're in some of the first generations of people, of humans and of women who have the ability to go out there and advocate for what we believe in. And so it feels good to use that. But I do understand the fear, and I do understand why you hold back. And maybe that's a really important defense mechanism. But it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're ready to be a bit more out there.
Yes. I remember
Yeah.
I used to, when I was growing up and going to school, I was always called smart and intelligent. And you're great, people always have some people have these sort of like, "Oh, my teacher told me that I was never going to make it." My teachers didn't say that. My teachers were always really encouraging, and that was great feedback because I responded well to that. I also, as a kid, you believe what you're told, so I believed that, and so I always had a self of like, okay, I'm this, and then there's my personality, which is very warm. I love people, I love connecting, and I don't I just generally want to sort of learn and embrace, and I can be very much in that mindset, and I love that. I didn't want to hold back that. But especially as a young person, I sort of felt that I thought I had to choose between being warm and being seen as capable, and thinking, okay, to be seen as more capable, I'm going to have to be like stern and cold and boring and just not really. And that was expending a lot of energy. Or, for example, or if people saw me as only personable, then they wouldn't see me as capable, or they would sort of like not really consider, there's a whole like warm and competency and how men seem more competent, even if they're, because they then tend to not be as, like you said, as they tend to be more disagreeable, their body language, their tone and stuff like that, they smile less, in terms of statistics of women and men. So it just made me think, okay, I don't mind making that choice, because if I'm seen as that, then I'll be able to be ambitious and climb up a career ladder or achieve what I want to achieve. So I was willing to make that trade off. And in certain spaces and places, it's important to, I'm not going to leave with hello, hi, and I'm going to be more sort of reserved, and that's fine, because there's part of me that's very matter of fact, very reserved, very sort of, okay, not emotionless, but I don't lead with that because I don't feel I'm empathetic, but I think it's more cerebral in terms of like, I don't think this should be the case and I don't think that's right, versus I feel that this isn't right. It's more, oh, this isn't right because this isn't right. Not, oh, I have such emotion and heart for this. I care about people, but I think I've been very much about justice. And again, like, where do we fall upon what is right and wrong? Gosh, what is right and wrong, and where do we fall upon that line? And how do we, having compassion for the person, as well as upholding a high standard for people and saying, okay, here's how we can go, and encouraging people along that process. So I felt like I always had to choose between warmth and competency and sort of analyze how do I fall upon that, because I didn't want to. But oftentimes that personality would burst through, and I was, even if I couldn't feel, I felt I couldn't help it, because you can only hold back yourself for so long before that becomes too tiring for you to not be yourself. But instead of sort of explaining that or trying to help people understand that I can be both, or maybe people are able to see through that and see both, but I'm in my head about how I can be and how people are perceiving me, because I want to be received, I want to be seen as capable, but I also don't want to be not be who I am. And I felt like that, I've always thought that, and I felt that people only saw me as one thing, didn't see me as the other. I could be completely wrong, but that's something that I always held back, and then later on, when I felt that people had sort of crossed boundaries and crossed lines, I would hold back that personality and be like, you don't get to hear my thoughts, my opinions, and what I think. You don't get to experience me as a person. I'm going to hold back because you don't deserve me. I had that opinion for so long, and now it's more about, sorry, there's some traffic outside, and there's like a rushing and a roving of a motorcycle. And now I'm more so, okay, I'm going to be who I am in every single space that I walk into, and I'm going to let people experience me and see how they respond to that and act accordingly, not in a not in a holding back sort of way, but in a okay, this is who I am, and if people get me, that's great. If people don't get me, that's also great. And being more mindful how I'm being received in terms of like, um, before it was more an anxious thinking. Now I see it as more considerate to say that I may know who I am, but other people can only. I love that quote I come across somewhat recently, that people can only receive you to the point that they like receive and accepted themselves. They can't
Mm.
receive you as a certain depth, but that they haven't received, that they haven't reached yet. So if somebody hasn't sort of gone deep, sort of whether it's healing or thinking deeply, thinking and processing who they are and how they can't receive you in that depth if they haven't gone there themselves. So being considerate of that. Not everybody is where you are. I think a lot about stuff. I've been through lots of things in life that have brought me to this place, and that hasn't been easy. And not everybody's there yet. So because I've experienced a lot in a short amount of time, I've been able to think in a certain type of way. Not everybody's there yet. So being considerate in
Mm.
that way, but also not being afraid to be myself because I'm trying to figure out how I'm just going to be me. If you get it, that's fine. But also me trying to analyze and that in that anxious mindset, it's made me underestimate people being able to receive me and love me and accept me for who I am. And that has, I realized, has been like, okay, I made judgments of other people instead of just sort of being myself. And again, when you're thinking so much about yourself, you're not able to think about other people and just enjoying the moment. So that's what, yeah, you're right. I definitely want to embrace this thinking less about myself and thinking more about others in interacting with people.
Mm. Well, it's an art that you learn throughout your whole life, knowing the circumstances and the capacity of others to take the whole of who you are. Um, and I think there is something quite healthy about keeping some of who you are private or sacred, or just reserving that for your inner circle. There are some things that you can reserve for just those that are closest to you. But going out into every situation and trying to put on a personality mask of someone who you aren't, it's going to exhaust you so much throughout your life. You are such a warm and friendly, beautiful person. I would hate to see you spend your life feeling like you have to be like grumpy and boring just because so many other people are. You know what I mean? Like, you bring so much joy and energy to a room. And I think it's a good thing to stand out. You know, I think it's good. Like, I understand what you're saying about perceptions about warmth and competence, but some of the most successful and competent people and highly intelligent people that I have met have been very kind and warm. And you know, those kind of cool, calculated, emotionless types,
Emotionally.
they tend
Yeah.
to actually have a lot of insecurity, and they're not actually at the top. They're kind of on the ladder, and they're doing that. They're treating people badly because they're deeply insecure. Really intelligent, soulful, accomplished people are warm. That's my experience. That's been my experience. And I've been really privileged to work with some incredible human beings in academia, in the entrepreneurial space, and in politics. I worked for a prime minister who was one of the friendliest human beings on the planet. And it's possible to live a successful life, to be taken seriously, and to have a personality. In fact, I think it actually helps because you stand out. So I would see what you have as an asset and not a liability. But I understand why you would see it as a liability, because you've been taking in all this messaging from society and all these, you know, images and movies and perspectives about what success looks like. And yeah, it is portrayed as the people that are very smart never smile and are really serious all the time. But that's not been my experience. Sometimes it's because they're introverted, but actually, when you get to know them, they're very warm.
Yeah.
But I don't think if someone's going to think this person is not smart because they're friendly, then that person probably has very bad judgment.
Gosh, that's something to
You
think
know?
about. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry,
And
that's
I think it takes time.
a
No, I
picky
think
mix
that's
of
true.
thoughts for you.
I think it's also, it's like, because I felt like people have like sort of put me in a box. I don't want to be put in a box. I'm like, I'm not like, I'm a multifaceted person. Sometimes I think like this, sometimes I think like that. I'm sort of learning and growing. But I also realized that you get to really, I think, yes, you can have a good impression of somebody when you first meet them or have a few interactions with them, but until you sort of see somebody, even if it's from a distance, from over a period of time, and you see their character and you see how they have been over a period of time, that's when you can get to truly know them. And one thing I've learned is that you're going to have to let people get to know you. And you can't do that without, when you're holding half of yourself back, or you're only showing the parts that you think people are able to accept and receive. So it has to be, I've had to learn to say that, give people time, because sometimes you have made judgments about people, or you see an aspect of somebody. Even my friends, sometimes they'll say something like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that about how you grew up. I didn't understand how that impacted how you are now. And that only took time and intimacy in relationship and getting to know them. Is You have to give people time to see you and get to know you. That's something that's, yeah, it was a
Yeah.
lesson to learn.
And sometimes, like, you dip your toes in the water. Like,
Yeah.
you just test out a little bit. Like, you just test out a joke
Mm.
or a bit of your personality, see how they respond. And you can
Yes.
do it in steps.
Yeah.
But I'm really passionate about exploring this idea of authenticity, because I think there's so much buzz around it and we're talking about it a lot.
Mm.
But I think there's this pressure to be authentic. You've got to niche down and
Mm.
like be one thing, and that's who you are. But I think being authentic is about embracing all the different parts of you and not niching down, but being
Mm.
everything at once.
Mm.
And actually acknowledging that other human beings can handle the complexity of your life because they are also complex.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
not just one thing.
No.
You are not just Canyon Solar,
Mm.
the political advocate. You
Mm.
are not just Canyon Solar, the great friend. You are not just Canyon Solar, the fashionista. You are not just Canyon Solar, the Christian. You know,
Mm.
there's so many elements. You're all of those things at once,
Mm.
and people can handle you being more than one thing.
Mm.
I think this desire to place people in boxes is really interesting, and I want to explore that a little bit. And I want to ask you, like, what are some of the boxes that you feel that people try to put you in, and how can we liberate you from them?
Boxes people try to put me in. I don't. My mind goes to personality thing, but I don't think that's just that, because I think, okay, I haven't been in people's minds or heard feedback, or sometimes when I've asked for feedback, I've been so surprised, because people have been like, for instance, I joined a new church at the beginning of 2022, and internally I was like, this is very new and different, and the culture, the people, and people are really friendly, and I'm really friendly, so that was fine. And I reciprocated that. But internally, I was like, people are new, and the lingo that they use in this church are new, and it's different and good. Like, what do I do? And I was very guarded and reserved, much like 10 times more than I am now. They've definitely helped me to be more open, be more comfortable with being me. And but then when I asked people, like, okay, what were your first impressions of me when I came, and what do you think you were, and people were like, oh, you just like threw yourself in, and I was like, that's great, I did do that. Internally, I was screaming, I was anxious, I was just like, what do I do, how do I interact, and thinking and processing and doing all these things, and being around lots of people, like, and lots of young people. I was like, how do I interact with the generation? Because it's a bit, not that I wasn't, but literally my age, so it wasn't that. It was just feeling and thinking. I didn't show up as that, because I also was like, okay, I get that there's just nerves of being in a new space with new people. So I threw myself in and tried to go on as normal. So I think people don't see me as sensitive. I don't know though, because sometimes I think my opinions about how I've been perceived have been wrong. But sometimes people do see
Mm.
me as sensitive, or they see me as more sensitive than I am, and not able to handle like correction or critique, and thinking that I'm not able to take it on. Or, for example, thinking that I don't care because I may not respond or physically react, for example, in a workplace where I don't like to show outward signs of stress. Like if I'm having a bad day, it's not my mission to make you have a bad day because I'm in a mood. So sometimes people have perhaps seen that as me sort of like not reacting because I don't care, but it's, oh, I do care, but I can't like act out that emotion because that's not helpful or conducive to me completing my work day and things like that. So sometimes when I have, it's like I'm letting myself have that ventilation so then I can go on and do the work, things like that. Um, I think I haven't given people as much credit for that. So when I'm trying to think, I'm trying to answer the question, but I'm like, okay, gosh, what boxes do people put in me? I think people put me in the boxes of being who they have seen me to be and not being more than that. So if they see me reserved, they may think that I'm a reserved person. If they see me as quite bubbly, they think I'm quite bubbly. If they see me as quite, if they have seen me in that black and white, speaking my opinions matter, they think that I'm just that. And then when they see me in another, like they're like, oh, I didn't know you did all this. I didn't know you were political. Like, for example, lots of people don't really know that I'm into politics or that I follow it. I've done had these different political experiences. If I don't talk about it, because it's just when I'm in the thing that I am, I'm fully that. So I'm not talking about that I really like fashion and books or that I really like color. Like it's more sort of the surface things. So I think not embracing me as a person who can have all these different interests. Not that they don't think that, but because they haven't seen it, they don't consider that to be me.
You are a complex, multifaceted human being. And I think that's great. I think it's awesome. And it's okay to connect with people on different things.
Yeah.
It's okay to have relationships with or friendships based on this shared interest, and then a different friendship group you bond with them over something else. In fact, that's quite normal, and quite healthy. I think what we all crave is to be seen and understood for who we really are. And so there are certain situations where you kind of have to let go of being understood. For example, complete strangers, people on the internet, they're never going to understand you. Sometimes people you work with, you maybe you just they're acquaintances. Maybe they'll just see a certain aspect of you. You know, if you try to look for understanding and connection in the wrong places, you can feel really misunderstood. I think what's important is having authentic relationships, really good relationships where we can be our whole selves and someone sees us and says, yeah, I see you and you're pretty cool. And that is the best feeling, like that authentic connection, which is found in these relationships with family and friends. They're so important for us because that's where we get our shared connection from. And I think one problem, I think you're very mature and that's not something that you're experiencing. But one problem that I do see with a lot of young people that I coach is the desire to be understood um, by people that are not going to understand you. So, for example, like wanting to be understood by strangers on the internet. And I speak from experience. It's so hard when you feel like, no, like misunderstood, like, no, I'm not that person. Like, I wish you could just know me.
Yeah.
But you're never going to get that in certain situations. So I'm like, well, why don't I try to search for understanding in my personal relationships? And then suddenly it doesn't matter if other people misunderstand you. There are very few people in the world who will really truly know you. And I think, you know, we don't treasure that enough sometimes. We take the people closest to us for granted, and we want to go out into the world and have other people celebrate us and see us. But actually those close connections are so important. But what is the most important, and this is something that I am still working on every single day, is do I understand and like myself?
Yeah. That's
Because
something to.
when you walk into a room or into a situation from a place of, I know who I am, I like who I am, it is such a different energy to being insecure and going out into the world looking for others to validate who you are. And it's a really important relationship, this relationship with ourselves, because we can, you know, I don't think we'll ever be immune to the opinions of others, but it certainly is it's a really strong foundation and can really help us cope with being misunderstood or disliked if we like ourselves. And that's, this is not me preaching as a coach or a mentor. This is like, I'm working on this right now. Like I'm working on the relationship I have with myself and liking myself. And that's quite new. That's like the last kind of few years or so. And I still struggle with it. So I don't know if I have all the answers. I think I'm just on the journey with you, but I wanted to call that out and maybe hear your response to that idea of, how can we make sure that like that's the number one opinion that we care about, our own opinion?
How do we make sure that our own opinion is the most important opinion we care about? I think it's really difficult to like yourself if you don't know who you are. Because I think starting at the beginning, as a child, you're often told who you are. You're told that you're, for example, if somebody is told that they're a bad kid, they'll act accordingly. They'll act like a bad kid. If you're told that you're a good kid and you're given lots of praise, you'll act accordingly, even if it's in a people pleasing way, because you want that praise, you want that affirmation. You believe that who you're told to be, and then as you grow older, you start to find your own self. You start to define yourself and figure out who you are, and especially in this era of being just being a person, actually not even 20s, just you're learning who you are, and you're learning how to, okay, even if I who I am, who am I, good and bad, because sometimes you want to see yourself as lower or higher than you are, or thinking that like I'm really an organized person when your room is really messy half the time. So okay, you're organized in this area, but you may be unorganized in that area. So being fully embracing who you are and saying that that is okay, that is okay. But for me, that is okay when I have a plan or a mindset and a heart to change and to grow. I'm not, if I say that I'm a very very superficial person, then I don't think I'm superficial. Anyway, I won't go down that thought path. If I said that I was a very superficial person, that'd be okay. If I thought, okay, I don't want to be superficial, I want to have depth and meaning, to have more depth and meaning to me, and not just take things at face value. So then I want to work on being superficial, not superficial. But in the meantime, if I see a superficial thought or somebody reacting to me, if that happens, then I'm okay with that because I understand that I'm learning and growing. But this is who I am, and this is why. Understanding who you are as a person, and I think having that mindset of it's okay can come will enable you to love yourself and accept yourself. But you first will have to, I think, understanding why. Understanding gives me a lot more peace. I think I've always wanted to understand stuff. I may not agree, but let me understand. I may not agree with somebody else's political opinion. I may not agree with somebody how they think, but let me understand how they got in that way. How have they been brought up? Who told them what? How do they see them? Like, why do you think that way? If I understand why, I'm not that critical of your opinion because I get how you got there. Then, in understanding why, you can sort of understand. You can pick holes into how to. You can see ways in how to bring them alongside, or how to deal with them accordingly. Because if somebody has decided to be to just not agree with you, to be very harsh or rude, it's like, okay, this is how they are, and that's okay. I'm not going to expend energy in trying to change them or trying to change their opinion of me. Let bygones be bygones. Wish them well in life and move on. So I think understanding is a key. Understanding is a key to liking yourself and loving yourself. You have to understand how you got there and why. Even if there were intentional bad decisions that were made, why did I make that decision? Was it just because I just didn't care? Like, why? Even if that is the case, understand why and then go from there. That has really
Yeah.
helped me to say that, okay, I may be in this position because I made a bad decision, but why did I make that bad decision? I just felt like it. Okay, that's fine. Then be honest with yourself, and in that process, I've learned to be really kind and gentle, because it's very easy to be harsh when you have a high standard for yourself. But instead, let's just say, okay, I'm a person. I'm not a robot. I'm not a, I'm not God. So I'm in that process of learning and growing and becoming a better person. I have high standards. That I want to reach. And I'm going to reach. But in that process, you have to understand why you are the way that you are, and enjoying the parts of you that are good. Being compassionate to the parts of you that aren't that great. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we've both got some homework from today's podcast. And I think that work is actually around that self reflection and self-understanding. And so maybe we should look at our game plans and what we've written about our values and our dreams and read through them for ourselves. And then let's share them and let's understand each other. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think it would be so good, even for us
Because
to be
you have
like,
big
okay,
dreams,
yeah,
and I haven't even read them all yet. And I want to, and I, you're talking about wanting to be like less. Like I want to see them more. So I think what we're hoping to do with this community is actually bring people together to authentically connect on who they are and the core of who they are. But I think that connecting with others has to start with connecting with yourself and liking yourself and understanding yourself. And yeah, thinking about your strengths and also your weaknesses, but still like liking yourself even though you're not perfect. That's something I really struggle with. I am so good at picking apart every mistake, every character flaw. But that's not the whole picture because there are also strengths. There are also big victories and wins.
yeah,
And I really enjoyed this whole conversation because I think it's something that a lot of us struggle with that we don't talk about. And so I really appreciate your vulnerability and your openness in sharing so many of the things that you've shared today. And as we come to the kind of end of the podcast, we always feed back to the guest to have the final say. So I want to pass back over to you and ask you about how has this conversation changed the way that you see things? How has it made you feel, and what will you take away from the podcast?
I think it's really made me more comfortable with the idea of being myself, but also, like, yes, being yourself, but like you said, there are boundaries, and not everybody has to, like, it's okay to hold those parts of yourself, because I'd be, again, black and white to be like, am I going to have to share everything or nothing? And it's okay to have those places of progress in between. But also in terms of, like you said, how you see yourself, because oftentimes, even myself, if I block myself to think, okay, I'm this and this and this and that, it's okay, I have these interests, and outside of that I haven't explored that, because if I haven't embraced entirely who I am and my different interests and likes, and just explored what do I like, what do I dislike, how do I react to things, who am I, then it's hard for, then even if people do accept you and don't box you, it's hard to receive that because you haven't accepted it in yourself. So again, it all goes back to how you see yourself and how you view yourself, and learning to embrace that truly. Because it's one thing to like, just embrace who you are. Who are you? Like, I think it's such a process. It's an easy thing to sort of to pin down in a few short sentences, but the process of that becoming is a lot longer and a hard process because you have to be really transparent and raw. But I think it's worth it. And I feel really encouraged to continue that process of being transparent and raw and honest, and brave in learning and growing, and like looking forward to the future with hope and expecting good things. Yeah.